Welcome to Author's Note. The new leaders of the Chinese Communist Party emerged earlier this month from the shadows of intrigue and speculation and onto the world stage. Headed by 59-year-old Xi Jinping, they are expected to run the world's second largest economy for a decade. What impact will they have on the speed and composition of China's economic growth? How will the investment climate change? And what will happen to the renminbi, to pick just one of the economic variables out of many? Here with me to discuss these questions is James Kynge, Principal of China Confidential, the FT's China Research Service. James, we've seen the new team. There are many questions about what they might do in the long term. But let's just look at the next few months and the next year. And if we look at this chart, we'll see here there's a range of forecasts about what might happen. What's your view?
Well, the interesting thing about what's happened just recently with the choosing of the new Politburo is that it's coincided with a significant uptick in growth in China. What we were looking at for the fourth quarter of this year as a gentle rebound in growth is now becoming something quite a bit stronger. We're seeing a very strong property market. Infrastructure spending, particularly in railways, is pretty strong. And several other parts of the economy, like consumer spending, are strong too. The China Confidential Freight Volume Index, which is a proxy for manufacturing output for the month of November, showed one of the strongest readings this year. So we do think that, I suppose, in a sense, it's fortunate for this new lineup of leaders that they're coming to power just as the economy is bouncing back.
That should also give them some room for manoeuvre on the policy front. What are you expecting longer term in the way of reforms?
Longer term, and I think this goes very much to this chart, it does appear to be a more purposeful and more powerful Politburo in place now than we've seen over the last 10 years. And very interestingly, over the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing some very reform-minded statements and speeches from the new top leadership. So looking at this chart, I would say that we're probably going to see something on the more optimistic side of this scale. So we can see the OECD line there predicting something at about 8.5% next year. I would say that next year will indeed be a bit stronger than this year. This year is supposed to come in at around 7.8, 7.9% year-on-year GDP growth. But given the reforms that this government can enact, particularly spurring urbanization among lower tier cities across the country, boosting demand in rural areas, and reordering the pension system so that consumer spending can also be boosted, we're looking at probably a slightly more optimistic picture for next year than this year.
Now, one of the consequences of economic change and policy change is the impact on the currency, and that's of great interest to foreign investors. If we look at this next chart, we'll see how the renminbi has strengthened recently. What do you think is going to happen over the next months and years?
It's a bit of a, on the one hand this, on the other hand that type of scenario with the renminbi, because exports in China are still fairly weak, and more importantly, exporter margins, profit margins, are very thin at the moment. That would tend to argue for a weaker Chinese currency, but at the same time, as I mentioned, the economy is now bouncing back, and particularly the property market is bouncing back, which is leading to a considerable inflow of hot money, investors' money from abroad coming back into China to invest in property. And this is causing the upward pressure on the renminbi that we're seeing at the moment. So overall, it's always a very perilous game to predict currencies movement, but I would say that next year we're going to see quite a lot more fluctuations in the renminbi than this chart shows over the last couple of years. But generally speaking, I think probably we're still on track for a gentle appreciation, when you equalize out all of the fluctuations.
Thanks very much, James. So there you have it. A broadly positive outlook, interesting things to look forward to on the policy front, and perhaps some strengthening in the currency.